to imagine all life as you know it stopping instantaneously and every molecule in your body exploding at the speed of light.
Total protonic reversal.
Protonic reversal.
Protonic Reversal with your host, Conan Neutron. Broadcasting from a secret underground lair in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
A gigantic middle finger to everything that is rotten about music, rock and roll, and corporate power.
The thing is, though, if you don't laugh, you're going to go on a killing spree with sharpened nails.
Confidence of a hero or a fool. I wasn't exactly certain which.
Could not be more professional.
It's only one I choose to devote my life to. That's okay.
It means something. It means something.
And they got away.
You know, that's my take. What's yours?
Protonic Reversal!
That's like a science thing, right?
Indeed it is. It is a science thing. It is a science place. It is a scientific fact that we're all up in your face. It is time once again for the one, the only Protonic Reversal. Welcome to it, welcome to it, welcome to it. Tonight, episode 393, a palindrome, I might add. A palindrome of a number, and maybe a palindrome of an episode. We'll see what the night takes us. I'm going to be talking to Spencer from Full of Hell, and also previously of iFlies. Looking forward to this. Interesting cat. Cool dude. It's hot as hell here. I'm not going to lie. So I'm feeling a little bit more drained than normal, but always looking forward to doing the Protonic Reversal with you all. Was it a dance? What? Yeah, okay, sure. Doing the Protonic Reversal. Yeah, fine. We can write our own ticket as far as that goes. Anyway, before we do any of that, welcome to Conan Neutron's Protonic Reversal. I'm your host, Conan Neutron. I'm a rock and roll lifer who's been touring and recording for over 24 years, most known for the band Conan Neutron and the Secret Friends. Music is a huge part of my life, and I use the format of this very long-running podcast to talk about music with musicians whose work I enjoy and respect, but who may not be household names. This is episode 393. If this is your first time listening to the show, archives of it are available for free. No ads, no sponsors, no kidding at protonicreversal.com. However, if you want to support the show and get episodes sooner, $1 a month at patreon.com/protonicreversal will achieve that goal. If you like the show or even just a single episode, please feel free to like, subscribe on your platform of choice, share it around the internet, and even leave a review. All of that helps people discover the show. Beats back the almighty algorithmic overlords. And it's a darn nice thing to do. So there you go. There you go, and here we are. There's a new Full of Hell. Full of Hell's an interesting band. Spencer's an interesting dude. Like I said, it was hot today, so that's the intro. Really looking forward to this. Spencer Hazard, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, how's it going?
Good to have you, dude. I'm very fascinated by this recent turn, and the only corollary I can think of is Brian Wilson. But like not in the psychosis or mental impairments sort of way, but the idea of that you're kind of taking a Svengali approach to Full of Hell, and maybe a bit of a backseat with the touring. I think that's really fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I wanted to, I listened to your episode with Jake from iFlies, and it's just like, you talked about this stuff a bunch, so I kind of wanted to talk to you, give you my side. Like, he didn't say anything bad. That was a great episode, but I think people
you get to tell your own story now.
Yeah,
you don't have to hear from that guy. Yeah,
exactly. But,
who we love Jake. Jake's great. Don't get me wrong.
I mean, with one of my other bands, Reaper's Gong, I see him maybe once every 2 months, right? Because we play in Philly all the time. So, but yeah, no, I've always had problems with traveling, and it's not I don't care about flying, but it's everything else that has to deal with it. Look at what's going on right now with the Microsoft crash, and it's just strikes going on at airports, and it's like the last time I did a European thing was for Roadburn, and there was a strike at the Schiphol airport. And that's, I'm not exaggerating. It's
always something. I believe you. Yeah.
There was 10,000 people in line.
Oh,
And like most of the other bands that played that festival, like that band Thou, they were stuck at the airport for 3 days. And we made our flight, like I figured out the patterns of people checking in. Like I was like
you're gaming the system.
Yeah, I was like, I got a bad idea or bad feeling about this. Like we should get to the airport early.
Yeah.
And yeah, we were the first ones to our like check-in and like, you know, paying for our equipment to get shipped or whatever. And just like in that, it was just like, all right, we wait, and it took like 2.5 hours to go from the check-in to the gate.
But you got there, so that's the important thing.
Yeah. But once dealing with that and like that road burn that we did, that was right when stuff started to open up with like COVID and stuff, but you still had to get like tested. So it's kind of nerve-wracking being around like a gigantic festival, being around tens of thousands of people
from who knows where.
Yeah. Right. And then being like, all right, after you have to hang out with like all of these people, just make sure you don't get COVID.
Right, along with everything else to worry about. Yeah. I mean, look, traveling is hell, especially now. You know, I feel like, and I do feel like pre-COVID, you could very comfortably do like, oh, we're gonna do a weekend tour where we fly out, do the thing, and then come back, and like you wouldn't have to think too hard about it. Yeah. And now, I mean, like, look, it's a running joke in my outfit that like someone in the band is like his flight is delayed every single time. It's happened 5 times in a row. So like once or twice, okay, it's like coincidence. But after the 5th time, it's like, okay, we're just factoring it in at this point.
Yeah, I mean, we just did a festival in California like 2 weeks ago, and it was like flying out of LAX. It's like we had to go find someone to be able to check in our guitars.
Right.
Because, like some airports are like, we don't care. We'll check them in, but then other airports like, no, the cases are too big. You got to go here, then you go there, and they're like, no, you got to go back. And
was it LAX? Well, I mean, it was LAX. I freaking ended up missing my flight because of that one time, and I was like, this is not what it was last time. You changed this, and they're like, no, we didn't. I'm like, don't gaslight me. I literally fly out of this airport all the time. You changed it.
But the first time we ever had to do a fly out to LAX, I think I had to go get the rental car, and I was like, you guys wait here. I'll go get the car. I'll pick up all the gear. The guy knew I was going to pull up, and he was like, well, I saw you were anticipating parking here, so I gave you a ticket anyway. And I'm like, I've been here for 4 seconds.
Yeah, like that wasn't even long enough to like engage the brakes. Yeah. Well, and then like get into that rental car area and back. It's like, oh yeah, that's a clean hour.
Yeah.
You know, you could like get there by burro faster, frankly.
Yeah.
No, it's hell, man. Like traveling is like, and when people inevitably do the thing of like, you know, you play a city and they're like, hey, come play whatever. It's like, we were just there. It just happened. And then like you think of the level of effort to like make it happen and the level of absurdity it requires to make it happen, and stress, like real stress.
And like also too, it's just like people are like, I'm sure you get this too from years of touring, being like, oh, I bet you get to see a lot of stuff, and it's like, not really. It's like we're in a van for 8 hours, and it's like once that 8 hours is over, I kind of just want to lay down in the venue until we got to play.
Right, exactly. Like we see some great truck stops, you know. That's, that's about the and it is a unique way to see the world, for sure. But after you've done it for a while, like, you know, the allure does it. Like it's something that you either want to do for forever, or maybe you're like, I don't really feel like doing this.
Yeah.
and maybe sometimes the same day.
Yeah. And I mean, too, you get to the point too where you're like, I don't know what else to do. So,
well, because you built your life around it, right? So it's like, okay. And well, that's why I think it's kind of interesting that you in the situation where you're taking a back seat to the part that does not spark joy, as Marie Kondo says, and kind of concentrate on just doing the music, like doing the thing that ostensibly should matter the most for a band, right? But you know, in some cases, maybe not so. And I think it's a unique solution. How did that come to pass? Was it just like more of a practical solution, or were you guys vision boarding, like, how can we make this sustainable and enjoyable for everyone?
So the first time that I like ran into issues was probably in like 2017 or 18. We were in South Korea, and
cool.
We were playing like, so we flew to South Korea and then do like Southeast Asia and then Australia, and just like,
yeah,
this was like at a weird point too in the world, because it was just like, you know, there's like a lot of stuff going on with like terrorist groups and stuff, and like,
yeah,
and it's like, I like one of the towns we were about to play, like, you read news articles and like tourists had gotten just kidnapped in that town.
Oh no, right?
And like we were flying on Air Asia, which was like, you know, planes had just gone missing from that.
Right.
So it was just like, I just got to the point where I was like, I can't handle this. Like, so they did Southeast Asia as a 3-piece. Like, the bass player just played guitar, and then once they got to Australia, our friend filled in down there. But I like did a couple more international stuff. But I really think like having that such a long break with COVID just changes your chemistry of your brain, especially too when it's like, at this point I've been touring full time for 15 years.
Right, because it's part of a routine for you. You deal with it all the time, and honestly, not a lot of it's that pleasant. I mean, the playing music part of it, great. That part's lovely. Could we just do that part? That sounds awesome, you know?
But as we were at Roadburn, and I was just like kind of melting down in like our hotel room by myself. I was just like, I know Gabe, who plays in the band Reaper's Gong with me, he's a great musician. Like, he'll fill in, him and his like ex, who was the singer of Reaper's Gong, will just get hit up by HR Bad Brains and do reggae sets with him sometimes. Just like on the fly.
Nice.
He'll just text them and be like, hey, I need a bass player for like this like live thing I'm doing at their local radio station. Can you come down? And he's like, yeah, sure. So I knew he was capable of learning our material.
Yeah.
And it's like what people have always said to me too. It's like, oh, it's so cool that you got this like unknown guy. Like, you guys could have gotten like some cool like session musician. I'm like, why? It's like a kid I've seen growing up that I know likes the same music as me.
Right.
Like, is good at guitar and lives down the street. Like, I can just go hit him up, be like, hey, I need to show you these songs. Hey, we need to go practice, kind of thing.
It's coming from a similar place and coming from a similar place.
Yeah. And it's just like, it's like, I would rather have play music with a guy from a small town than like having to fly some big hotshot out to do stuff.
Right. Oh, let's see what Scott Ian's up to. You know, okay.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, and that's cool because it allows the band to live as a live unit and people get to enjoy and engage with it, but it doesn't mean that you're kind of putting yourself up on the cross to suffer for it at the same time, right?
Yeah, and it's like, that's what you have to look at it like too. You have to look at it being like, the band isn't just me, the band is other people.
Right.
And like the unit is more important than like the soldier.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, well, and that's why it's a band and not like a solo outfit, right? But it's interesting. Well, because Reaper's Gong is a pretty interesting band in and of itself. I mean, it's kind of, there's like kind of a dreamlike sort of quality to it. I mean, maybe that's like more like due to the vocals, right? But like there's something kind of like, oh, this is kind of like, I feel like you don't hear that as much. Well, look, I mean, let's be clear. There's a genre rife with Cookie Monster, right? Peace and love. But there's a lot of Cookie Monster style vocals. So hearing something different like that kind of it stands out. Like it stands out, and it seems like it's like, oh, that can pull from like the Creation Records world or something along those lines, just as much as it can from like Godflesh or whatever.
And that's like, I mean, initially was starting like when me and Pat started iFlies, like he came from more of like the AMREP style, but I came from more of like the like disgusting noise rock stuff, like, you know, No Trend, Rectal Hygienics, Flipper, stuff like that. And then once I moved back from Philly, I didn't want to like stop doing noise rock stuff. So I just like, I hit up Gabe and our original drummer, and Gabe, who is in Full of Hell, he had been in a bunch of bands with Zoe, the vocalist of Reaper's Gong. And like, after we jammed a couple times, he was like, well, I can ask her. And she like has all, even like their old band was called Dirt Woman, and it's just like a stoner rock type band. And it had like, you know, the same style of vocals. And it's like, once we jammed, it's like it actually sounds way more unique than, like you said, like someone trying to do like a gruff voice or like, you know, something like.
I like Neurosis too, you know.
Yeah, and it's like, I think it's like a good juxtaposition, because it is like we are influenced by like early My Bloody Valentine type stuff that's less shoegaze and more like garage noisy rock stuff, but also too taking elements of like post-punk and, you know, the like I said, the more disgusting end of like noise rock stuff.
Well, and there's a corollary to some of that more grindier, you know, nastier, like shoegazy kind of stuff, and the noisier stuff. There is a through line. It's just usually you only see it in like one way, in one capacity. Where it's like, oh, I know the exact records that you have, and those are good records. But like to hear it actually blended in is kind of nice, because anytime things end up too dependent upon certain sounds or whatever, then I think that genre tends to not flourish. Like, and I think to back what noise rock used to mean versus where it's like, oh yeah, you like Unsand and Helmet too, huh? Cool.
Yeah.
You know,
and
so do I, but Jesus Christ, dude.
That's my thing with like shoegaze too. Like, I don't like most shoegaze. Like,
oh, it's garbage.
I like the early My Bloody Valentine stuff because it's noisy. I like the Jesus and Mary chain because someone described it as being like, you know, a pop band with the guitar tones of like a Japanese hardcore band.
Because there's a raw meanness to it, but there's a pop sensibility at the same time. Yeah, and then for sure.
Then there's bands like that are like super like, you know, not very known, like Goslings from Miami, you know, and it's just like drone shoegaze with like pretty vocals.
Yeah, well, and there's a lot of room to innovate there, but it's kind of, I feel like you get close to certain boxes, then people just want to like erect the walls around that box and be like, well, that's not this and that's not that. And it's like, well, you realize that these bands sounded like nothing that came before them, right? Like it was like at the time, like now we have a lexicon and a language to deal with them, to explain them and speak of them in context of the larger thing. But they just were, oh, that's just a bunch of obnoxious noise. You know, no matter what the genre, it's, oh, that's a bunch of obnoxious noise. You know?
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, that's what they thought about rock and roll when it first came in. It's just a bunch of obnoxious noise. I like my crooners, you know. So it's no, I like that, and I think it's interesting, especially as someone. I mean, you've got a storied history with. I mean, you did that record with Merzbow, right? I mean, that was awesome. That was which I love. First of all, love that it happened, and second of all, love the title, which I think it's a whole song. It's right, if I remember correctly.
Which song?
The one day you will ache like I ache. It's like
that's a line. That's with the body.
That's with the body. Okay, which is the one I'm thinking? It's just Full of Hell and Merzbow. Then is the one I'm thinking. Okay, all right. Sorry, my bad. I was thinking of a different collab. Yeah. Sorry, dude.
Oh, you're good. We got a bunch of them. So
well, and I think that's such a cool, because Merzbow is almost like shorthand for just uncompromising to the point of inaccessibility for like a lot of pop listeners.
Yeah.
But there's people that are in Merzbow are usually like musicians or artists or people into experimental music where it's like, wow, like this is a bold reimagining of, you know, what can music be? Oh, it can be like this grinding, you know, horrific noise that after a while it's like, wow, that's actually really cool. Like it gets zen for a while. You know, you can find things in it that transcend the genre. And I think that's what most people that do noise sets probably think they're doing.
Yeah, and I mean, there are some aspects where there are some people that are doing something very unique and cool, but then there is like so much redundancy too. But I mean, that's with every genre of music.
So let's talk. We'll talk about the Body one as well, but let's talk about that collab, because I think that was so cool when that came out. That was like 10 years ago or something, right? If I remember right. How do you even start that? How do you even like approach that?
I mean, so we were playing a show at St. Vitus, and this dude came up to us and was like, "Hey, I really liked your set. I play with Merzbow. I play like live drums with Merzbow." And we're like, okay, sure. He was like, you know, we thought he was blowing smoke. He was like,
sure, yeah. How can you prove or disprove that, right?
Yeah, he was like, I'll talk to Masami and like we should do a collaboration together. And then it's just like, okay, whatever. And then like a month later, he emails us being like, talk to Masami. He really wants to do it. He's going to send you over an hour of material and just do what you want with it. So like this was our first collaboration record. So we were all pretty young and like, never done this before.
It's like, arguably many people have not done it before, so especially with something like that, right? Because it's not like, hey, like we're hanging out with Dylan and we're going electric. That those are at least songs. This is a totally different thing.
Well, like with this that record, we like actually tried to write material around it and like use him as almost like a band member rather than like a guest. Yeah. And we had enough material that we just recorded 2 records with it. And recorded one that we were in the forefront and then one where he was more in the forefront.
Right. So the dividing line for that was like what? How did you like sort through that? Because I find that so fascinating. Because for me, like that internal process is as fascinating as the music itself. Is like how do you sort that?
Like I think it was like essentially we recorded, like we wrote the songs and put them together and we're just like, all right, like instead of just blasting it with noise, which is like a lot of his collaborations are, we were like, let's just use him more as like a texture type thing and like make the songs denser rather than like us trying to fight for space. And it's like that's one record I would go back and like remix a little bit just because it was like we were so novice at doing something like that like I feel some of his stuff gets lost in it. But with the second record where he's in the forefront, that was mainly just me and the vocalist just kind of messing around in the studio with Kevin, who's in iFlies now, just like doing improvised stuff because the music part, our drummer recorded the drums for that in I think like 2 hours. He came to the studio, recorded it 2 hours, and then just left.
Amazing. I love that. That's a baller move. Well, to me, it kind of those two kind of reminded me of talking about Neurosis, the Neurosis Tribes and Marat, Times of Grace and Grace, right? Where they're kind of companion pieces to each other. Yeah. And that was exactly our mindset, like at that point, because we've always been into like noise aspects of music, but there is bands like Man is the Bastard Noise, where it's like they coexist, and like specifically Tribes and Neurat, we saw that and was like, that's what we should be trying to do with this record. We used to practice down the hall from Neurosis. I'm not bringing this up to humble brag. I'm bringing this up because of this story, which is the guy, they were at the time of the recording stuff in their practice space. They're like, hey, we got this drum full of bees. Can we bring that in here so we can like record it? And the practice space guy's like, no, you can't do that.
That's a cool idea.
It's like, no, what? No, you can't. We're not going to. No. And I was like, you should have just done it. How's he gonna know? And I think they ended up just doing it in there anyway. But like, I was just like, we got this drum full of bees. Amazing. What a great sentence, right? Drum full of bees. But anyway, that's again not meant as a humble brag. Just my. There's never a good time to bring the drum full of bees story, except for this particular moment right now.
Yeah.
No, but that's kind of the gold standard of for me, one of the gold standards of the album plus accompanying album. Kind of like here's a derivation and a variation on a theme kind of thing. It seems like, that's such a big sonic palette. Because the only one I can think of that really worked is the collaboration with him in that same, was that it was like a dub record, right? If I remember right. I forget what it's called.
Jamie Sapp Merzbow. That was like one of our favorite records when we were actually like putting this stuff together, because it's like I do enjoy the like Boris records that he's done, but he's done like 5 or 6 at this time, and they kind of like after a while kind of just like meld together.
You almost need like a best of those or something, like and it's not bad, like it's good, but like again, it was they're all. I feel like there's less of a lexicon for bringing quote unquote harsh noise into a, for lack of a better term, pop perspective. Historically, that there really is no rule book. Melvin's and Lustmore, right? Like that record.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
another one where it makes sense. Cool record though, and but it is funny. It'd be like, oh yeah, I drum from Merzbow. Okay, yeah, sure, dude. Like, how can I disprove that? Like, there's a place around the corner. It says it's America's oldest pen shop. How can I disprove that?
Yeah, well, this guy,
I don't know.
This guy ended up he's one of our best friends now. Like anytime, awesome. Like he's from Hungary. So anytime we went over Hungary, he let us stay at his grandma's house with him and stuff. But he'd be like, hey, what time you guys leave? Like, I have to go meet up with Thurston Moore and go record some stuff. Or he's done projects with Jim Jarmusch and Lee Ronaldo. But then he did documentary pieces for his local paper for Prodigy and stuff like that. So he has a very interesting weird life where he's just awesome. Doing stuff that you would think is just made up.
Right, yeah, because the reality of it is more absurd than anything you could come up with. Yeah, no, I mean, good for that guy. That's great. I mean, that's to be so lucky. Sounds great. I dig that. So at the time, you guys were what, 2 records in at that point? That was after Rudiments of Mutilation.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, let's fire back to the beginning here. How did Full of Hell even come together? I actually don't know the answer to this, so this is going to be interesting. Hopefully.
I mean, it was it essentially started with our areas. We're in a very, very small town. We're everybody's assumes since we're from Maryland that we're from Baltimore, but we're 3 hours from Baltimore.
I know.
Our areas, either you live at the beach or you live on a farm. So there's no in between. And
what's the population? Under 10,000 or something?
I think in the wintertime there's probably 8 to 10,000, but in the summertime it can get up to 1 million because it's a resort town.
Oh, sure. Yeah, that's right. Okay. Yeah.
So it's a very odd dichotomy here. But yeah, it's I would always just play music with the weirdos I could find. And we were just in a bunch of hardcore bands and stuff. And those bands fell apart. And me and my friends just started jamming one day. And that's how essentially Full of Hell came to be. But Dave is the longest member in Full of Hell. That's the drummer.
Right.
He wasn't in it in the beginning, but he was on the very first tour. But he was 14 or 15 when he joined.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I just found him. Someone had mentioned being oh, this kid Dave, he's really good at drums. So I found him on MySpace and I just messaged him. I was like, hey, do you want to go on tour with a band? I booked a 3-week tour for this band that has a 4-song demo.
Amazing.
And he was like, well, I've never been in a band before. And I was like, that's fine.
You'll find out if you like it soon enough.
Yeah, and he was like, I'm 14. I've never been in a band. So his first show was his first tour.
Are you kidding me? That's insane. Talk about a trial by fire, right?
So it's
you better hope you like this.
We started Full of Hell, I think 2 weeks before my 20th birthday. And I'm 35 now.
Yeah.
And it's just we've had a bunch of members come and go, but Dylan, our vocalist, he joined 6 months into the band because one of his previous bands had actually played with Full of Hell, and we just started talking, being we were interested in the same just weirdo music. And once our first vocalist left the band, he messaged our bass player at the time, was like, hey, he lives 6 hours away from us in Pennsylvania. He was like, can I join on vocals? And we're like, would you live 6 hours away? And he was like, I'll figure it out. We'll make it work. And then
that's a commitment right there.
Yeah. So
that's not 6 minutes. That's 6 hours.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
Wild.
So most
how does he do that? Is he just come in for weekends or something, or
we just essentially will be all right, hey, we're going to practice in Dave lives down the street. Gabe, like I said, he grew up in my neighborhood, and then Sam, our bass player, his parents live behind my parents' house.
Okay.
So it's I sold Sam his first guitar when he was 13.
That's awesome.
So
I love that.
So all these we've just kind of been on the periphery of each other for our whole lives. So we all kind of live around each other. Like I live right down the street from Dave. So it's like, if we're going to have writing sessions, I'll just go to Dave and be like, hey, like, let's jam kind of thing.
Something out. Yeah.
And then, but then once we're like, all right, we need to like start figuring out like a new record or getting a tour, like set list together, Dylan will come down for like those like big practices kind of thing.
Gotcha. Okay. So you guys are still doing work, but not necessarily always with everybody always there, which is fine.
It makes it, and I mean with technology, it's just like makes it so much easier just to be like, hey, here's like, files of like what the set list is going to be, or like here's videos of me and Dave writing a new song. So
yeah, and then can kind of remotely get a feel for things and sort of that makes sense. I mean, technology's come a long way as far as that goes. So.
But I mean too, it's like we started in 2009, and that's like right on the precipice of like technology taking over everything. So it's like we still had like the shitty GPSs that never worked right from Walmart and just like flip phones and stuff. So it's like
I remember it well.
Look
at you, Magellan.
It is very strange, like being in a band for like, it doesn't feel like we've been in a band for 15 years, but you look back and you're like, damn, like society has changed a lot since we've been doing this.
I mean, and look, like I happened to be out and about when AT&T had that massive nationwide outage, and there are all these people like at these gas stations that literally didn't know how to like get home or how to get to like wherever they were going. And luckily, like, I had to start touring when you had to use an atlas. Right. So like, I was like, I'm just going to get this atlas. I'm good, man. And and I know these roads. I know you're going to go here till you hit the St. Louis and you go hang a left.
Yep.
But these folks that the people become so dependent on their GPS that they have in their pocket. Like it's kind of crazy to think about. I mean, it's amazing in a lot of ways, but there definitely was more of a Lord of the Rings style adventure to it before it was as ubiquitous, because for better or for worse, it made traveling much easier and more dependable.
Yeah, and like too, it's like we had a lot of humbling experiences that made us grow up pretty quick, pretty young. Like we went to our first European tour we formed in 2009 and went on our first European tour with 2 7-inches in 2011, because the guy that put out the first 2 7-inches is like, hey, I know a couple people, I can book you guys a tour. And we're like, oh, okay. And
that's all the excuse we need. Let's go.
I was the oldest one on the tour. I was like 21 or 22.
Oh my God.
And it's like, a super shitty beat up van. And like, we get to Germany and the police confiscated the van from us, 'cause they're like, this isn't good enough. You can't drive this on the road. There's not enough seats. The power steering's broken. Like, so, being a bunch of little kids just stuck on the side of the road in Germany, being like, telling the Swedish band, being like, you need to figure out how to get us to the airport.
Yeah. Like, that's insane. Well, I guess good for them. I mean, that's the difference in Europe and the U.S. You used to be like, well, your van sucks, kids. Later.
Yeah.
Good luck with it.
Another thing with international travel where I'm always like, I will go back to Japan, because at least people in Japan, if you're lost or something, someone will just like essentially hold your hand until where you need to get to.
Do you need help getting to where you need to go? Instead of just being like,
sorry.
Yeah, exactly. Like, sucks to be you, boy.
Yeah.
Well, so walk me up. So you mentioned like all this stuff is happening when you have like, the first EP and whatnot. Walk me up to that first record, to the record in 2011, Roots of Earth.
I mean, that was just like kind of like a big deal for us, because I mean, like, this is the first band that any of us had been in where we're like, we have to write a full record. It's like, it's kind of a
how could you ever have that many songs? Yeah,
exactly. It's like most of the band, and it's like, it's at least like with the bands that we like grew up listening to and influenced by, it's like they released so much material and it's like, that's still an inspiration to us, like looking like bands like Man is the Bastard and stuff. That's like why people are so so perplexed that we have so many side bands and so many records and stuff like that. It's like, because the bands we were influenced by, like, we see that and we're like, that's what you're supposed to do as a band.
because they're growing and they're changing. You know, a lot of these bands will have epochs or eras. This is this era that they were doing this stuff, and now they're doing this other stuff. And you know, I think that's something to be lauded for. But then some people get confused by it. It's like, what's the best fall record? Jesus Christ, how long do you have? You know?
Yeah, well, it's like, yeah, seeing like the bands like that is just like that was like super inspirational to us, and it's just like, yeah, I mean, going back now, like listening to our first record, it is very like, you know, I'm proud of that record, but it is a very time and place record. But I'm not one of those people where it's like we need to re-record it as an adult, and it's like, why? Like, I don't understand when bands like are like, you know, you see bands like Exodus or something will record their records from when they're teenagers, and it's like, but that's what makes that record special.
Yeah, now great. It's, you know, it sounds better now. Like half the reason why it sounded great is because it sounded like it was, you know, trash from the trash can, like just reverberating around. You know,
I mean, that's why all those Discord bands are so good too, because it's like, or even like all of like Justin Broderick from like Godflesh's bands. It's like he started Napalm Death when he was like 13 or 14. It's like
insane, right?
That's awesome. Like, I mean, he started Godflesh when he was like 19 or something.
Yeah.
It's like,
he was already over, and now he's doing this totally different, more awesome thing. You know,
and it's like that's what makes those records good. That's what makes those records special. It's like, why would I want to hear like, you know, a middle-aged man trying to relive something he did as a teenager? Like, I don't get that.
Yeah, a lot of people seem to like that for some reason. But I'm with you. Well, and then also there's just I don't like all the records. Fine. Doesn't mean you don't, you know, like, who cares? Like, like they like them. So like, it's a river, man. Like, if you're really there for an artist, like the idea that like the albums have to be museum pieces, right? And here's your Smithsonian exhibit for, you know, your band and exists here. And there's only so much room. Watch out. No, man, it's a big world.
Yeah. I mean, like, that's what it's like looking at bands like Swans or Melvins or something. It's like they don't stop, and it's like that's very inspirational to me. It's like that's what I would want my musical career to be like. You know, if you don't like something on a previous record, then I guess just write a better song and start a new record.
Well, totally. So, and that first record, you know, all the songs are pretty brief. Most of them are at 2 minutes or so, except for the last one, right?
Yeah,
and they're all like, I don't think it clocks 30 minutes. Frankly, I think it's like pretty succinct, as they say.
Yeah, I think only one of our records ever has broken like 40 minutes.
Yeah.
So,
well, and that's, I mean, it depends on your taste too. But I think for a lot of times, especially for anything ostensibly, not to reduce things, but anything in like that grindcore power violence sort of world, I feel like less is usually more. Especially like, there's exceptions to that, but like if you leave them wanting more, they're like, oh, I'll just play the record over again.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
and,
awesome.
Or they're going to be like, oh, I want more. I'll just go check out another.
I'll check out a different record because they have a lot of them. Yeah. So that first record, so it's kind of baby pictures in a way, right? Like it's but I mean, can you give me any thoughts on that? Any thoughts on like where you guys were at a band at that time? Because you've been 2 years in at that point, right?
Yeah, year and a half, something like that. Like by the time those songs were written, it was just like, I don't know, we were still very much into like, not so much like when those songs were written as well was when we had our first bass player, and he was more of a straightforward hardcore guy, and did not like the experimentation. So he left before that record was recorded, but it's like as soon as he left, it was almost like me and the vocalist Dylan were like, now we can just do whatever we want. So it's like we had these songs, and it's like at the time, like I said, it is like kind of like the record, I don't like to say novice, but it is like a beginner type thing.
Yeah, you're figuring it out, you know.
Yeah, growing pains. So it is like very much like in the vein of like just like hardcore or whatever was popular at the time. And but after he left, then that's when we were like, we can just do whatever we want. Who cares?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a different kind of creativity too. Like that's something where you can kind of like carry it forward and be like, all right, let's try this crazy thing, right?
Yeah.
Let's do this, let's do that. So I think the next thing was as far as releases go was one of the splits. It was like with Code Orange Kids, I think, right?
Yeah. And that was just like, it's like a lot of the stuff is like with these songs and stuff, and I don't mean to like undermine any of my music and stuff. It's like I never set out to be like, I'm going to write this specific thing. It's always just
Right.
like, if it sounds cool to me, that's the way it sounds, kind of thing. So it's
Sure.
like, yeah, like that was at a point right before Code Orange kids blew up to be like Code Orange,
Yeah.
or whatever they are today. But
Whatever it turned into, exactly. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. So yeah, just like, I mean, that time period is just like, I mean, essentially it was just us growing up into like young adults just touring all the time and just recording all the time.
Where you're looking at it as like, oh, here's just a cool thing that we can do, and then there's another thing to sell at the merch table, and we can.
Yeah, it's essentially just being like, yeah, it's like, and like going back to like the previous thing of just being like, we're seeing all these other bands like that we are inspired by doing splits with all these like odd bands and stuff. It's like, why don't we try to, mold ourselves into something similar?
Yeah. Were there hints of those guys going kind of metalcore at the time, or was that just because I was kind of like, huh, what? Is that the same band?
I can't I vaguely remember. I think they like first not showed us their like new metal sounding stuff.
Right.
Like, I mean, we kind of, I think we're on like good terms with them, kind of, but we kind of did have a falling out with them eventually. But we used to do so much touring with them. They were like,
I heard they were a stellar band. Yeah, I never saw them, but
we saw like when we first played them, we played with them in like a basement that held like 15 people in Pittsburgh.
Nice.
And it was just like, we saw them, we were all huge fans of bands like Page 99 and stuff. And that's like, that's what it reminded us of. And we're like, dude, we told everybody about this band, and like,
Orchid and stuff like that. Yeah, totally. Yeah.
And, I mean, I think we did a European tour with them, and they started showing us the more like metallic stuff. And we're like, this is cool. So,
Interesting path, that band. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
And good for them. So tell me about how the walk up to Rudiments then.
That was like when we, like I said, like it was the first record, Roots, had been written with like a previous member, but then this record was written with the lineup that lasted for like, I would say like 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
And that was just like, we were all very much into just like stuff like Discordance Access, like a lot of Hydra head bands and stuff like that. So it was just like, let's try to do like noisy, grind stuff with elements of, Swans and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that there's still hints of like what you guys would later do in there for sure, but it's also again, nothing overstates its welcome on that record. Like it's pretty, it's pretty like pop, 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 pop.
Yeah,
which is fine. I mean, that's a good place to be.
I specifically remember sitting there with the guy that ran A389, and he was even like kind of confused by that record of being like, here's our new record. And he was just like, all right, this is cool. And, but then he was like, after a while, he was like, I didn't understand where you guys were going, kind of thing. But now it's like all making sense.
Well, because context is everything, right? And sometimes if you see like where somebody is at later, then you can kind of, this was an ember of that earlier on, so on and so on, and it gives you additional context later on. Hopefully, that's the that's the idea. Sometimes I go the other way where you're like, oh, I give this too much credit. This is not as interesting as
yes.
My bad. No names mentioned, by the way. So then we went in depth, of course, for the Merzbow collaboration, which is next. So the next record is after Brandon leaves, right? Amber Moat, or was he on that one?
That was right when Sam, the current bass player, joined. Last thing he played on was the first Body collab, but it was like,
oh, I skipped over that one. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
He only played on like, because of like the way the Body plays, there's like not a lot of room for like bass and stuff like that. So,
there's just not a lot of room.
Yeah, so it was just like we were already having kind of like personal problems, just like with touring and just it's just growing pains of being a band where it's just like some people just like they just don't want to do it full time anymore. And he was getting to that point, and we're all kind of just like butting heads on that like subsequent tour that went into that record. So it's for that record, we did, I think, a month-long tour with the Body, and then immediately on the last day went to Machines with Magnets, and then wrote that record in the studio and recorded it in 4 days.
Yeah, that's intense.
Yeah. And it was like, as soon as we got done the record, we were like, all right, we got to drive from Providence to Baltimore to go play Maryland Death Fest.
Of course, as one does. Yeah. No, that was the one. That was the one where you guys actually came to my attention. Because actually, a lot of people don't know this. When this show very first started, I actually had a co-host, and she actually was a big The Body fan.
Okay.
And so I might have even played one of the songs in the air. I can't remember, but that's how I found out about you guys, is through that release. Which is funny, since I totally biffed which one was which for the title. But
yeah.
Look, man, I'm not Wikipedia. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's fine.
But I always love that title, because it's like that's a the one day you will ache like I ache is like, I think that, first of all, it's an evocative phrase for me. I think of that whole song, but like, it's also just a cool phrase.
Yeah, it is named after that whole song. Like, Lee from The Body came with that title, and we were like, yeah, that's cool. Like,
that's awesome, yeah.
Because he's done stuff with, like, I think the one Uniform record is like a lyric from like an Ozzy record, you know?
Yeah, what is it?
Mental wounds aren't healing or something.
Yeah. I can't remember exactly, but I remember I was like, hell yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. That's always, that's kind of like, there's a sniff test for me for that kind of thing. There's kind of like, you don't want it to be like too clever.
Yeah.
That it just becomes obnoxious, but like I'm totally here for that. So that one happens. That first Body collab happens real quick. Then that's and you I hear you right. You said you like wrote most of that in the studio.
I mean, it was like all written in the studio. Like, we just essentially. I mean, I don't know if you know much about that studio, Machines with Magnets in Providence. Like, we've done a bunch of stuff with him. Like, he's done a bunch of stuff for Five Finger Satellite and Lightning Bolt and Black Dice and all those things. And Seth, who does those records, is just like, we can just essentially just be like, hey, we want to record something like this or do something like this. And he's like a studio wizard. Like, and that record is where it's like, I remember reading a quote or something from Trent Reznor of just being like, you got to use the studio as like an instrument. And that was the first record where I'm like, this makes sense.
Yeah. Well, cause it's got to kind of have a wild feel to it in that way, but it definitely, you guys sound like you're definitely taking advantage of. By the way, love those bands. Six Finger Satellite has even been on this very show. Yes. Love the work from that. I was going to say more. I will say less. I love the work that comes out of that studio. I've never seen it. I would love to at some point. But I think that's it's a really cool, like, wildly creative thing that sort of doesn't sound like either thing. It sounds like its own thing.
Yeah, and I think that's important for like all of our collaborations, is just like,
right.
You don't want it to sound like of course there is room for being like, you want it to sound like two bands playing against each other, but for the most part, a successful collaboration sounds like two bands being one band. And it's like, I feel like a lot of collaborations, it's like people are fighting for space, and that's not the point of a collaboration.
Well, yeah, and then that can, there's a certain degree of like Jay Robbins on this very show mentioned like Jawbox being like the sound of guitars fighting with each other, which I always really liked.
Yeah, and like that's cool.
Great.
Yeah, but like there's some aspects where it's like, if you're going to write a record together, why would why would you want it to sound like you're like
yeah
rubbing against each other?
Here's the songs that came in from The Body. Here's the songs that came in from Full of Hell. They sound like that. Like it's sort of that's following the script to a certain degree of whatever we can that you can say with that. Okay, so that's the first. So bass wise, that's the Body recording is the first. The first Sam recording, or
that's Brandon's last is the Body.
Brandon's last is the Body record.
Sam, his first record is that Amber Moat 7-inch.
The one that's got the oven cover.
Yeah,
nice.
Yeah.
Anything to say about that?
I mean, I think that was for that 7-inch, that was like a record where we're starting to come into our own and being able to balance our influences a little better rather than just being like, here's this song that sounds like this, here's this song that sounds like that. We're able to being like, all right, here we're really influenced by stuff like, Ass Suck and Brutal Truth, but we also too like noise rock. So here's a Melvin's cover.
Yeah, sure. Let's get the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, so that's and then when does stuff on Neutron happen? That's that because that first Body collab that's a Neutron. Yeah,
the CDs on Neutron and the vinyl we had pressed ourselves.
That's right. And then it's the next collab that's a Thrill Jockey.
Yes.
Later on, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Then, which is Sending a Mountain.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Just gotta check all my facts. I got it wrong really early on, so I got my bona fides to there. So a lot of times, there's different reasons to like come back to the well for a collaboration. What was the idea of doing another collab with The Body? The fact that you like each other.
So just essentially, we liked hanging out and eating pizza together, and we just had such a good time in the studio, and like that first record went over very well.
Yeah.
So this record, we were kind of just like, let's just throw all expectations out of the window instead of like going back to it being like collaboration, being like it should sound like one band. This one, we're like, let's sound like one band, but let's also just do whatever the fuck we want. That's why that one is like, we're like, let's make this one way more experimental than the last one.
Yeah, because I mean, it's definitely everyone's letting their freak flag fly, as they say on that one.
Yeah, and that's like, I mean, even like before me and my wife like met and stuff, she'd be like, yeah, I'd like, do like a industrial techno night and I'd play songs from that record,
Yeah, it totally works. Absolutely. Yeah, why not?
So yeah, that's just like that record. We were like, let's just, we had done a collaboration tour where we played the first record all the way through, and then we ended up doing a Devo cover on that tour as well, playing Gates of Steel together.
Oh, nice.
And
nice.
We were like, why don't we go to the studio and like record this cover? And we did that, which ended up on like some Thrill Jockey compilation. But we were also we're like, instead of just doing the cover, why don't we just do a whole nother record? And we're like, okay.
That is a wild change up, but I like that.
And that's what like Death at Machines was just like, he was like, I didn't realize Dave was such a crazy drummer, like on the first one. So he was like, I called Brian Chippendale. He's going to come down here, and him and Dave are going to have a drum off, and like that's like on one of the songs. And
yeah. I mean, that's a good, good pinch hitter to have.
Yeah,
that guy's getting good.
Yeah.
We'll talk about a guy with a unique style, right? I mean, it's like, within like a second and a half, I'm like, I know who that is. In a good way. I mean that as a compliment.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot of cool stuff in there. There's a good moody record. There's some good. How did you get into like all the electronic stuff? Like, was that always kind of like parallel?
I mean, for us, it was more of like, I'm not like the biggest on like gabber or techno and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like, you know, not very like well versed in that.
Because people that are like, that's all they do, and like they live it and breathe it, and it's like, oh my god.
And like the drummer,
like I'm into comic books, but I'm not into comic books like people into comic books are into comic books. You know?
Yeah. But yeah, the drummer of the body, he's like really into like all of that, like just you know, he's mainly just a music connoisseur. He just like, if you want to ask him about, you know, punk bands, like I forget the name of his like emo band he was in when he was like 19. Like they've just been doing a bunch of reunion shows, but he's also too being like, you can ask him about black metal, you can ask him about techno, you can just like ask him about any type of music. He'd be like, oh well, this and this. So, but like for like the aspect of like Full of Hell, it's like we've always really liked stuff like Throbbing Gristle and SPK and you know, just like early industrial type stuff. That's like, when people say industrial, it
actually sounds like industrial machines, not like
it's not what
heavy disco.
Yeah.
Like it actually sounds like, oh yeah, that's a cement mixer, you know.
Yeah, so that's like the electronic elements that like we would bring to the table with like something like that.
Yeah, and that's what it adds, a nice aesthetic. It adds some nice color to things. Like you can get sounds that are unique and different, that aren't just dudes with guitars playing. You can get something that sounds like, you know, it is both contrasting and complementing the aforementioned dudes with guitars, which is great. Was there any what is anything on that one? Because that was kind of a that one's definitely like it feels like the soup that has like all the ingredients, you know, whatever, throw it in, put it on the pizza. You know,
that's essentially it was essentially just like a practice of being like, let's have fun in the studio,
right,
and see what comes out.
Yeah, I mean, like they have but there's like saxophone and stuff on that, right?
Yeah,
is that what it is? Yeah.
And it's like Sam, who plays bass for us now, his first tour actually was playing saxophone for us when Brandon was playing bass.
That's awesome.
And it was essentially just being like, hey, we like stuff like Brain Bombs and Naked City and Painkiller. And it's like, why don't we just try to piss everyone off? And so that was our thing.
There was a great band from Oakland, where I'm from, called The Mass. Mm-hmm. It basically sounded like a cross between Naked City and No Means No.
Cool.
And they had a saxophone, and it was pretty awesome, because first of all, people were like, what? Why is there saxophone? What? I thought this was a metal show. What's happening?
Yeah.
And then they just like rip it like so hard, and people are like, all right, I get it.
Yeah. And it's like, I mean, even the Merzbow record, we had our friend, he's from like the same area as like Piss Jeans and all those bands. Like, and he was in bands with like Piss Jeans and the guys from Piss Jeans and stuff. And we had him play trumpet on the Merzbow record, and he played trumpet at our first time playing Maryland Death Fest. We added an extra noise guy and had a trumpet, so we played as like a 6-piece band, because we were like, yeah, we're playing a death metal festival. We're going to stick out anyway. Why don't we just try to fuck with people?
Right. Exactly. You're going to contrast no matter what. May as well go full bore with it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, why wouldn't you? No, that's pretty fantastic. So I feel like when Sam gets in there, I feel like stuff gets kind of pretty static for a while. Like pretty like they're the lineup wise, like things are like it's a good group of folks. That there's not a lot of tumult necessarily.
I think it's like this with like this lineup now. It's just kind of being like, we've all worked like. Because it's like everyone from that lineup is the same except for Gabe, who's the new guy.
Right.
And it's just like, yeah, what we've been doing, playing music, and we've had to work like 9-to-5 jobs, and like doing 9-to-5 shit like sucks. It's like we have to do that when we're not on tour, or like, I mean, we've found ways around it now where we can like do fulfilling stuff not on tour.
Yeah.
It still is just like, I think this group of guys understands of being like, internally being like, this is what we're supposed to do,
and that it's important, and you're gonna make the time for it, right?
Yeah,
you're not gonna find time, you're gonna make the time.
Yeah. And it's like it's more fulfilling, like, yeah, being an artist is kind of like disheartening sometimes, but it is more fulfilling than having to work a shitty job too.
Testify. Yes. Tell me about Weeping Choir. That's you recorded that with Kurt?
So we did trumpeting first.
Oh, trumpeting first. Okay. Yeah.
Then,
All right,
then weeping. And trumpeting, that was just like those records, I would say trumpeting and weeping. Trumpeting is like that record has somehow taken a life on its own. And it's just like.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
And it's like, I mean, I remember within a couple months of that record coming out, we played that festival, Obscene Extreme, and seeing people have tattoos of it already. And it was just like, okay, this is weird.
Yeah.
But that was like one of the first records where I was just like, I took kind of like how we did with that Body record of just being like, why, like, because with our older Full of Hell stuff, I'd be like, this stuff sounds like too metal. This stuff sounds like too noise rock, and this stuff is like. But that record, I was finally like, as long as it's Full of Hell, who cares? Like, as long as it sounds good to me, who cares?
Well, and that's something where that's a band being comfortable in their own skin.
Yeah, and it's like I feel like I take that mindset from like a band like the Melvins of just being like I think even like King Buzzo says it in like the documentary of just being like, yes, we're never going to sell 1 million records, but it's like there's going to be someone out there that likes what we do. Even if not 1 million people do, there's going to be a niche. And that was like the first record where I was just like, even if our old fan base doesn't like it, as long as I like it, there's going to be someone else out there that likes it.
Right. And you just kind of just have the confidence to know what you're doing, and to know that you may not see that person in front of you, but it's going to connect with them. And, just follow your own compass and don't compromise on it, which is very hard sometimes.
But yeah, that was the first record we did with Kurt, and we just had like played a couple festivals with like Converge, and we just ended up hitting it off with them. So we were like, let's just do the next record with him.
Well, and that's a guy that, like, I mean, that dude knows sound, you know?
Yeah.
That guy not only knows sound, but knows how to like make interesting, for lack of a better term, heavy sounds work. You know, Scott Evans is another one, right? Where it's like, oh, you just are really good at this. You're really good at this specific kind of thing. Trumpeting had the really cool remix EP, right? If I remember right.
Yeah, it had a remix tape. I think it was like Ben that plays with Chelsea Wolfe did some stuff, and Igor Cavalera and a couple other just like close friends.
Yeah, that's how I got turned on to the fact that I was like, oh, Igor's into cool stuff, right on.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, not that I like should have opinions about him anyway, but I guess he just makes certain assumptions. It's like, oh, he's the Sepultura, like that's your legacy, you know, like Jesus.
I mean, I would say
it's okay, you don't have to do anything else.
I would say for both of those guys that it's like them for like legacy metal stuff, it's like them and that band Immolation. But it's like Max, we first got involved with like the Cavaleras because Max's son came to one of our shows and he was like, oh nice. I'm so and so Cavalera, and we're like, his name's Igor too, and we're like, Igor Cavalera, that's weird. And then he was just like, he was like, yeah, my dad showed me you guys, and we're like, oh, okay. And then he was like, then eventually found out we're like, oh, his dad's Max Cavalera, but his dad like keeps an ear to everything that's like popping up cool underground, and not in like a contrived being like, I need to, seem hip. He's just
he's just generally into it.
And it's like same with Igor, but he's on like the opposite end of like, he's into whatever's popular with like industrial or techno or noise. And it's just like, it's very cool seeing like these older guys that have been around forever still being like into it.
And they're still engaging with the community. They're still engaging with newer music. Yeah, I mean, credit where credit's due. I don't want to make the discussion about him. I guess Springsteen is the same way. I hear he's like just vociferously like devours new music and is like always looking for new stuff. Good for him. You know?
I mean, he obviously is into weird shit if he's always like, referencing like suicide.
Suicide, yeah, exactly.
And I mean, you can even say the same with like Neil Young,
Sure.
taking out, and like that's
the whole thing with Devo he did, amazing.
So taking Sonic Youth on tour. I mean, he has the one record from the Sonic Youth tour that's just all the feedback in between songs.
I love it so much. It's like it's such a flex, and I'm here for it.
Yeah.
So now we're actually up to Weeping Choir.
Yeah.
So that's 2019, right? And now how spread out are you guys at this point? Like, is it like still?
It's still just me and Dave. Like, I think I might have lived in Philly at that point. I can't remember, or it's like right before I moved back from Philly. But I think it was like, no, I wrote Weeping while I was living in Philly. But so we were pretty spread out at that point. Like at one point, me and Sam were roommates in Philly, but we were living with a now ex of mine, and we broke up. So I just moved back home with my parents, which kind of, sucked. But, so it was just like, it's always essentially been like one or two of us have been close to each other, and it just depends on which member kind of thing. So, but now Sam is actually, as of today, moving back to Ocean City from Philly. So, like 4 of us are going to be here except for Dylan now.
It's always got to be someone that isn't.
Yeah.
that's the law, apparently. No, but that's a cool. I mean, there's you guys were doing stuff with Primitive Man around that time, right? And there was a lot of. I feel like 2019 was a pretty interesting year for you guys.
Yeah, I mean that's the year our van got stolen.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that. Jeez.
Yeah. So it was like right.
I definitely felt for you having. Yeah, that's no fun, man. My van's been stolen twice. No good.
Like we were on tour like with like Author and Punisher and Cattle Decapitation, and it was like on tour to support that record that had just come out.
Yeah.
And we just we stayed in a hotel outside of Atlanta where like we don't want to stay in Atlanta, we'll just stay outside of Atlanta. So we found a hotel with like overflow airport parking, and then the guy that was doing merch for us the next morning was like, hey, did one of you guys move the van? And we're like, nope. So
can I tell you, we're probably gonna switch to air tags, but I have, since my van has actually been stolen twice, I actually have a tile, look, 2 of them located in different secret parts of the van for this exact reason.
Yeah.
One time it was stolen to steal an ATM. I'm not even kidding. This wasn't, we were on tour at least, but like still, like it's pretty terrifying.
It's so all we got.
It's a violation that if you've never had it happen to you, you can't imagine what it feels like.
Some guy messaged us on Facebook and was like, hey, I like went to a flea market and I saw this guy selling shirts and I thought they looked cool, and I looked it up and I saw like the news article. So some guy was selling like 50 of our shirts at a flea market.
Are you kidding me? I never heard that. That's amazing. I mean,
we got the bag of shirts back on the very last day to claim the insurance. So it's like, if they don't find the van, they have to give you like the lowest blue book value or something.
Right, which is going to be like maybe a down payment on another one, maybe.
Well, yeah, it was like, I think it was like 17,000 or something. Well, pretty good, but still is like, it's not enough to buy a van. As I was on the way to the post office to drop off the final paperwork, the insurance woman called me and was like, have you talked to the cops? And I was like, no. And she was like, well, they found the husk of your van, so you got to rip up that check. We're going to send you another check. Since it's just the husk, we're going to send you $2,500. Yeah. And then the last I heard about it was we got some like local protection thing. Like the guy they found the guy with the t-shirts. He was supposed to go to court and he never showed up. And then the last thing I heard about it was the cops called me and were like, hey, what's up? And I was like, I thought they were calling me, be like, hey, we found your guitar, like found
right, all the other stuff that's missing. Sure, yeah.
They called me and were like, hey, have you heard anything? And I was like, isn't that your job? Like,
You tell me, brother.
Yeah. So yeah, I had a custom made aluminum guitar from Kevin from iFlies. Dave had ride cymbal that was gifted to him from Igor Cavalera. Like, so just like, luckily, like, you know, a lot of people has helped us out with, like, someone started a GoFundMe for us, which was awesome. Yeah. So we got most of the gear back, like, replacement wise, but like, I mean, that guitar and that cymbal were like,
no, it's one of a kind. Forget it.
Yeah.
That's. Yeah. What's funny is I remember when that happened, and I think I even kicked in on the GoFundMe because, again, like, if you ever had it happen to you, like, you're gonna be the first one to like kick in $20 or whatever, right? But I don't remember hearing about this, like, you know, wow, what recovery there was, let alone him selling the shirts. That's a certain type of ballsy.
Yeah, and it's like the guy that puts out our records now. He was like, "Hey, I'm going down to Atlanta. Like, I'll go to the police station, just get the shirts." And I was like, "Yeah, just like a fucking duffel bag with, like, you know, like I said, like 25 to 50 shirts in it. That's it."
Yeah.
And of course, those thefts happened the day after Thanksgiving, so we had to get a rental car, and, you know, usually rental cars are like, you know, $150. It was $600 to get a rental car to drive back to Maryland, and it's like we had to wait at the airport to get the rental car for like 4 hours.
Because there's no cars available around that time. No, I'm intimately familiar.
Yeah, so it was just like us with like a couple sleeping bags and like, you know, a T-shirt and stuff. We're like just sitting at the airport being like, there, you know, this is all we have.
Here we are. This is what's happening. When do you guys, let's go to something cheerier. When do you find out about the art of self-defense thing? When does that come in?
So Riley, the guy that directed that movie,
who's great. I love all his movies. He's awesome.
Yeah, he just randomly emailed. It was yet again like a Merzbow situation of just being like, "Oh yeah, right," kind of thing. But then he just started coming to our shows in LA and was just like, eventually he was like, "Oh, I'm." One of Dylan's friends was like, "Is that so and so? Like, he directed this movie Faults. Like, I love this movie."
Yeah,
and
Faults
is
great.
Yeah, we just like finally, you know, we just talked to each other and like hit it off, and then we, you know, found out he was actually a director, and he was like, "Just want to put like a couple of your songs in the movie," and it's like even his newest movie, Duel. Like, I think there's a couple Full Hell shirts in it.
I saw him in there too. Duel is also great. I'm a big Karen Gillan fan, as well as Breaking Bad Home Slice. So I was like, "Oh, great, that's awesome. I'm totally into this."
Yeah. So
sorry, I can't remember that dude's name right now, but maybe if you put out a record, I could remember it. No, but it was so nice because I remember being like, "Is this Full of Hell?" Like when I saw Art of Self-Defense, because I want to say that was the first one of his that I saw too. I didn't know anything about him. You know, I didn't know it came from music. I was just like, "Oh, this is some martial arts movie with that one guy. That guy's good. All right, cool. I'll check it out."
Yeah, and it's like a situation too where it's just like, you know, you get hit, you like small independent people will be like, "Oh, I want to use your music," kind of thing. But it's like kind of crazy. It's like a guy hitting you up, being like, "I want Jesse Eisenberg from, you know, The Social Network doing a bunch of scenes listening to your band."
Right. AKA Film Nation's Mark Zuckerberg is going to be listening to you. That's pretty wild. And because it's not like it's like, "Oh yeah, it's in a club scene, you can barely hear it," you know, like whatever. It's in a kid's boombox when it passes by. You know, it's like no, this is very like, this is tangible.
Or like some kid's college project, be like, "I want to use your, you know, for a scene," which is cool too.
It's freaking awesome. I'm all for it. Don't get me wrong, but that's kind of what you expect. You don't expect to be like, "Oh, wow, dude from Zombieland is totally like." Rocking out to this right now. That's crazy. No, and that's, you know, that's cool because that exposes a whole different audience to the music, whether they know it's you or not. You know, it's going to expose a whole different audience to the music, and there's also small things that are, you know, they can keep you going. They can keep you going when things are like maybe, I don't know, not so great with the in other categories. What was the timeline for that? Did you find out about that before or after the theft?
I honestly can't remember because we've been friends with him, Riley, probably since like 2017 or something like that. Like he always came out to our LA shows. Yeah, and I just can't, like, that timeline blurs because I mean, right before or right after the van got stolen too, like 4 months later, COVID happened.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I've been trying to forget.
Yeah, and it was just like, you know, I'm like dealing with insurance stuff that's just like up to that point, essentially. Like you obviously know with insurance, it's like
they leave you dangling for so long, man.
Instead of, you know, you think it would be easy to get it for hours or in a couple hours, couple days, it takes months to get it figured out.
Yeah, that's
and
wouldn't wish it on an enemy.
Yeah, so yeah, we were supposed to do a big European tour, Full of Hell, Primitive Man, and iFlies opening, and
that's right.
I think 2 weeks before we left, everything shut down.
Yeah, well, at least it was before you left.
Yeah, I mean,
Torch got stuck in Europe for a while.
Well, that's what I was about to say. I specifically remember being like, Kevin being like, hey, there's this like weird disease going on and like we should be careful. And like it was like we were playing this club in Italy and we hadn't played in Italy in like 10 years or something. So it was like all these people were excited, but Kevin was like, we were talking to the promoters and they're like, it should be fine by the time you guys get here. And then,
oh yeah, we'll go through it by then.
and then seeing, you know, Torch having to live in Greece for like a week.
Yeah. It's absolutely insane. Like, I mean, like whatever, like a lot of other bands had a rough go of it too. Like we got through 2 shows of ours before we had to go back. You know, there's nothing that kills attendance like you're on your way to the show and then the governor of that state tells everyone to stay home and you're like, well, we're already here, so I guess we'll just play. And then like, oh yeah, people literally can't leave their houses now.
Yeah,
cool, right on. Well, what do we do? I guess fuck us. I don't know.
Yeah,
but not stuck in Greece. So,
yeah, I mean,
he told that story of them. Oh my god, I couldn't even remember. It's like where in the world is Carmen San Diego for like Torch getting to like.
I mean, that sounds like literally. I don't think I would physically be able to handle that.
Like, at what point do you just like give up and slump into a corner? You know, just like I can't.
It's bad enough going back to the beginning of of this being like, you know, going to there when COVID regulations were lifted and then everything's still being messed up. And it's like, I couldn't imagine being there trying to escape it.
Ugh. It's a lot. And it's crazy. It's also like, I feel like there's this time thing where it feels like 2 weeks ago and like, you know, 2 decades ago at the same time. Like, it's like, and both can exist simultaneously in my mind, but it's, yeah, man. So, okay. So COVID hits, everything changes. How far along were you guys with the songs for Garden?
I think I had like maybe 1 or 2 ideas, but like that record, I straight up was just like, I mean, hey, we can't tour. We might as well just write music. Right. So me and Dylan started like a couple side projects. I started my solo noise stuff, and it's just like I wrote that record in I think like 6 weeks. So wrote that record in 6 weeks. We did like an empty venue show with nothing before we did a collab with them. So we did like a live release of that and just did like some reissues of older material. We were just like, you know, if we can't tour, we have to keep busy because if not, we're just going to go insane.
Well, yeah, because it's like you got to keep moving, right?
Yeah.
I mean, creatively, at least, if you're not moving, you're stagnating.
Yeah. So and it was like, at least with like recording, it was like, you know, people don't understand. It's like you are isolated. It's like we went to Machines with Magnets for that Garden record, and it's like you don't really hang out with people at the studio. So it's like it was just us in our like social bubble, you know, 4 people, 5 people.
Right. You're not licking each other's faces when you're doing takes. Like,
yeah. So
I don't know. Maybe Fleetwood Mac was. I don't know, but
yeah. But I mean, that was like cool experience to do that record there. But like, it's just, you know, it is a disappointing time because too, it's just like, you know, you write the record at that and it's like it just kind of goes off in the ether because I mean it's like before COVID happened too, like, and Jake was saying, it's like we just had done that iFlash record too.
That's right. Yeah. So you've got both going at the same time. And
yeah.
Wah, 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 wah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's brutal. I mean, and that's, there was a lot of people that were kind of re-examining their place in the creative world around that time, right? And like what that meant, and how much do you want to do this?
Yeah, and it's like, it's lucky. It's like, I've always done like construction part-time because like my dad has a small construction company, so it's just like if he needs help, like, I mean, it's only him, like he'll do like running the company, and it's like a foreman, his grandson, me, and my wife was working with us at that point too. And it's like, I was lucky to be like, hey, I can still make money if I'm not touring at least. But it's like, there were so many people where they're just like, I have to sell everything I own because, my job's gone now.
Too real, dude.
Yeah.
Way too real. Let's just say I bought back a lot of amps. That's what I'll say. This show helped too. Thank you to all my patrons, by the way, because that also started.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So Garden comes out. It's that weird time. 2021. It was sort of like, this is gonna be over any day now, right? Right.
Yeah.
Right. And it's not.
Yeah, I don't know how many tours we had booked in that period, and just being like talking to, because it's like a lot of the booking people we worked with were like in touch with like health regulation people, because they're like, they have to make a livelihood and figure this out too. So they were in touch with like people that worked with health organizations, and they're like, should be good in 6 months. So it's like, you book a tour from 6 months from now, you get to 6 months, and it's like, got to cancel the tour.
Yeah.
So it's like, that happened at least like 3 times.
It's I feel like we're all still dealing with it, like the blowback from that. No, it's amazing, like, live music survived it all, frankly.
Yeah.
I did personally. I mean, do you feel like people, kind of meant more for people when it actually happened? Because I feel like it wasn't taken for granted nearly so much, personally.
What I've noticed is kind of like a double-edged sword, because it's a lot of people have come back, and it's awesome because like the shows are like some of the biggest shows we've ever played.
Yeah. But
it's a lot of new kids that grew up in a time period where they didn't have that social interaction, where I'm sure you and I know from going to shows. I mean, I started going to shows when I was 13.
Yeah. Let's say.
And it's like, really now there's a whole group of kids that just like, they see how people act in videos at like hardcore or, any extreme music show. And it's like the first time they've ever been in public.
Which is almost, means that they're dangerous, because they don't like, no, you're actually like, nobody's trying to get violent here. We're just trying to like, we're all enjoying the music in our own way.
So that's like the one thing I've noticed is just like, the shows are packed, but it's like so many people. It's just like, it's like I said, it's like I'm sure with you too, it's like we've known an etiquette from being in bands for so long, how you act. And a lot of these newer kids just don't know how to act.
I didn't even think about that, because there is that, because you have like this pent up social anxiety from just only communicating through devices and screens. And then you also have, just like not physically having someone show you the ropes, like, look, this is how you conduct yourself at this. This is how you make sure you're not being a total a-hole.
Yeah.
To the people around you, it's like, not that I'm saying get in the pit and love somebody necessarily, but like look, like it should be catharsis, but if somebody doesn't want to be involved with that, don't involve them.
Yeah. And it's just like, and it's like it's like a situation. It's like, these kids need to like, go and learn and do stuff, but it's just like, it is.
How would they know?
Yeah, exactly.
There's no YouTube tutorial that I'm aware of.
Yeah. But they see the YouTube and TikTok of being like, you got to go to the show and be an asshole.
Yeah. This is what you do. Yeah. You go as nuts as you possibly can.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, kind of, but not really.
Yeah.
Like it looks more out of control than it actually is. There's actually like a complete science behind it. But no, that's interesting. I don't think I've ever heard anybody articulate that, but it makes sense, right? Because we think of like all the things, well, just like all the, kids that like miss these formative years of school and social interactions that we take for granted. Like that's like going to be like a weird, potentially crippling black hole for them,
Like, I mean, yeah, I couldn't even imagine of being in a situation as like a 13-year-old being like, yeah, you can't go skateboarding with your friends after school.
I mean, look, as much as they're a couple years of high school, I wouldn't mind redacting and just staying at home and reading books during, but like, just not having the option even to engage with like the people that are forming your identity around you. That's crazy. Like the long-term social aspects, the societal effects of that are going to be crazy to behold.
Yeah.
Wow, that's deep. Anyway, so you did the collab with Nothing and Primitive Man.
Yeah.
Bolt. So can you tell me how those came to pass?
So Primitive Man, we known Ethan from Primitive Man for like, I think it was our second Full of Hell tour. We had met him. He was in like another like grindcore band called like Clinging to the Trees. And like he ran a couple DIY venues in Denver. So we had just been friends with Ethan for like over a decade. And it just got to the point where we're like, we do collaborations all the time. Why wouldn't we do another one with our friends? So we went out to Chicago and recorded with this guy named Andy who plays in Weekend Nachos. And that was more of a record we like kind of wrote together first in the studio and then recorded it kind of thing, instead of just like with like the Body records. It's like so much you write the part on the spot, then record it and kind of figure it out. This record we like put together, and then just once we were like, okay, we've practiced and wrote stuff for 4 days, let's take 4 days to record it. And then with the Nothing record, we actually got asked to do a collaboration set even before we had jammed or anything, play something live at Roadburn. And so the year that's like, it was one of the coolest year of Roadburn for me because I got to do all this stuff. Like they asked us to play Trumpeting, Weeping, and Garden all the way through. Yeah. And then the last day do this Nothing collaboration set. But it was also one of the worst weeks of my life where I was like, I never want to come to Europe ever again.
Like I'm done with this for forever, but yeah.
It was just like me having a mental breakdown in a hotel room and then having to put my game face on and play in front of 2,000 people every single day. And then the Nothing set.
Which is something that it isn't just like, I know these songs like the back of my hand, or I remember writing this. It's like, no, this is something entirely different and has to engage a different part of the brain.
Yeah.
Too, right.
So with the Nothing thing, we like got together at Dave's house in Ocean City, and we jammed for like 2 days and kind of just like wrote a basic structure for what we were going to do and demoed it. Then we got together before our set at Roadburn for like 2 hours, jammed these ideas together and we hadn't seen each other in like 6 months, relearn all these parts to the demos, and then go play that set in front of like 4,000 or 5,000 people in a theater. And like it said,
it sounds like a dream and a nightmare at the same time.
Yeah. And it was just like, I think our set was like, we practiced for the 2 hours at like 2 p.m, and then our set was at 1 a.m. So it's just like, yeah. So that record, so we used all the skeletons for what we did at Roadburn, and kind of just like got together a couple times, solidified the ideas, and then went and recorded with Will Putney, who like he records like he's like a Grammy winning producer.
Oh yeah, he's done all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, right? Done Body. I think the one day I wasn't there for the studio, Nikki from Nothing was there, and he was like, Will hit him up and was like, can you come a little bit later? Like Ice-T's here. He's got to finish some vocals.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So it's just like that record was kind of difficult to record because Nikki and I are so like headstrong with what our ideas should be for stuff. That was like one of the first collaborations where I was like butting heads with someone else. And it's like, I'm not going on and saying, oh, I was the mastermind, but for this, like all of these other collabs, but this was like the first one where I'd be like, hey, I got this idea. And they'll be like, no, this doesn't work. You know what I mean?
There was resistance instead of yes anding. There was kind of like a difference of opinion.
Yeah, and but I think that record was very like formative for me for like as a musician, because it shows you that like less is more, and you know, you're not all necessarily like always right on something musically, and like you know, like it like, instead of always flowing with ideas, you need to like reel it in to service the song.
That is a very adult observation. You know, I mean, I think there's something about the exuberance of youth that you're maybe not going to catch that lesson immediately. But no, I think that's very wise to come around for that. Which isn't to say that it's like a one size fits all thing, of course, but you know, like if you're in a situation like that, when in doubt, that's probably the best way to go about it, I would say.
Yeah.
The results are good, you know.
I mean, we just performed there was 2 songs that we kind of like wrote in the studio.
Yeah.
And we just performed the whole record in entirety like a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, at a festival in California.
Oh, fantastic.
For the first time playing the record. Like I said, we did the couple skeleton ideas and road burning, and like wasn't set yet. It was kind of just being like, get up there and jam kind of thing. But this was the first time we were like, this is how the record goes.
Right, because you've had a little time to kind of...
Yeah.
It isn't like, it's been 10 hours. Okay, let's see if we can pull this off.
Yeah, and it was still nerve-wracking. We got to California like 4 days early just so we could practice with them, and then it was just like,
right, yeah.
Okay, here's go play this record for the first time in front of like 1,500 people.
Yeah, I'm noticing a trend. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not nerve-wracking at all. Why would that be? Yeah, exactly. It's an average Tuesday, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's always kind of an interesting situation too, because you want it to get over. You want the ideas to get over and for everyone to enjoy it, but it also still has that kind of newness to it for the most part, that like you don't know all the beats. You don't know like where this is going to do this and where that's going to do that. You're almost kind of discovering it like together while you're doing it, and that can be exciting and exhilarating, and that can be absolutely terrifying, and maybe in the same measure.
Yeah, and that's like that's going back to like us butting heads in the studio, because it's like maybe, you know, a bar of a song is something different to like say Someone in Nothing compared to like what I would count it as.
Yeah.
So,
oh my God, don't even get me started on that.
Yeah. So like, you know, we're sitting there and being like, I would never play a part 5.5 times. Like that's insane. But you know,
but this one's counting differently, and that seems to be what these guys are doing. So okay, I guess I'll.
So that's what was like. That was like the nerve-wracking part of just like, I kind of like stood back, and me and Dave kind of watched each other, and I kind of like cued him, being like, "Okay, we played that riff 6 times. It's time to go to the next one."
Which is fun, but it kind of like makes it almost like non-Euclidean geometry or something too.
Well, it's also too. It's like a situation where it's like when it is like a part, say like, you know, 5 some weird signature, because I mean I'm used to doing stuff in 2s and 4s.
Yeah.
It's doing something in a time signature like that. If you're off a little bit, it's just like there goes the whole thing.
Oh, it sounds like garbage. Yeah, it's not gonna sound good at all. And then you're like, was that me? Yeah, I guess that's me.
Yeah.
Damn. Which again, you know, no pressure if it's just like the other band members in the room. But when you got like a massive audience, it's like, oh, what's this gonna be? Is it gonna be any good? I don't know.
Yeah.
Let's find out together. You know.
Yep. So, luckily, it went over very well.
That's awesome. That's great to hear. No, and that's. You know, I feel like your entire career has been full of like kind of cool things that could be dice rolls in different people's hands, but it seems like it's all generally gone fairly well, at least been interesting. You know,
I mean, and I guess that's the fun part of being a musician is just like, I mean, if you don't get out of your comfort zone, I mean, it's going to be pretty boring.
There's people that just like, they like not having to think about it, I guess. I don't know. I can't explain the mindset because I don't quite understand it, frankly.
I mean, I guess that's why they're millionaires.
Well,
so.
And you're talking to me. Exactly. Okay, so we talked about damn near everything else but Coagulated Bliss. Right?
Yes.
And this came out this year. This April, I think, right? April, May,
yep.
somewhere around that neighborhood. I was real busy at the time. I remember that. Yeah, cool record. How did this one come to pass? Because it's sort of like not like you've been resting on your laurels necessarily, but does this have like this new modus operandi of you kind of writing and doing the work while they're running around like playing the songs, or is this kind of predating that? Is it postdating that?
I mean, this was a record. Like some of the songs were definitely, we were like, a lot of the times with like a Full Hell record, it's like I present them with a song.
Uh-huh.
This was like a record that we kind of like, yeah, I presented them songs, but there's also times where I'm just like, here, or we get together and actually like, jam it out and get it done. And
right.
This is like another record where it's just like, I'm really into stuff like Dinosaur Jr. and stuff like that. And it's and
I can hear that. Yeah.
And like I've said it in other like interviews and stuff too. It's like, why can't an extreme band be influenced by like death metal and something like Dinosaur Jr.? Because they might sonically be different, but they meet somewhere in the middle because they're still underground music and they're still extreme for what they do. And
absolutely, yeah.
That was the mindset of just being like, I like stuff like Dinosaur Jr. I like stuff like Butthole Surfers. Why can't I filter this through like a Napalm Death cloth?
I was talking about the other day was Independent Worm Saloon, that record, which I characterize as one long guitar solo, but I was like, I mean that as a compliment.
Yeah.
Like, no, it rips. I mean, like, if you didn't even know Rembrandt Pussy Horse or Hairway to Steven or any of the classic Butthole Surfer stuff, and you heard that, I'd be like, I defy people to be like, tell me this doesn't rip. This rips.
Yeah.
I mean, what's...
I think Locust Abortion Technician is actually like, I know it's like, it's crazy that record is considered as well regarded in like the public domain as it is.
It's an insane record. Like nothing about it should work, right? Everything about it's like, this doesn't make sense. I don't know why it's doing that.
But yet somehow it's like gotten its way into like the literary lexicon of just being like, if you want to listen to one of the best records ever, listen to this record. And it's just like, it's a noise record essentially.
Isn't it great that stuff like that can happen? Like where it's like, okay, so this, because it isn't even, the record cover of that, isn't it, like the clowns, right?
It's like the weird, like old circus drawings.
Yeah. And it's just like, everything about it's like, oh, this is not okay. There's something unsettling about this. And then, I mean, like, look, like, what am I going to say? Like, a human cannibal? Get out of here. That's amazing. Graveyard? Come on.
Yeah. And, like, it's just, like I said, it's like those bands, like, Dinosaur Jr. might sound like an indie rock band or a pop band, but, like, to someone else, like, going back earlier of just being, like, this guitar music just sounds like noise.
Right. Well, exactly. Because it all depends on your perspective. Oh, that's not metal. All right. Who cares? Like, I mean, and I feel like there used to be this really silly division between like, oh, the metalheads and the punk rockers. Well, they're over there and then they're over here. And it's like, okay, but we're all listening to this niche music, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, what exactly? Why? But like the one thing I always say is people agreed on Slayer and people agreed on Motorhead.
Yeah,
and that was about it. I was like, okay, all right, at least we can agree on something. But now the kids today, they're like, what? No, that's all. This is just awesome music. Like, who cares?
And it's like, I mean, but that's what I like. That was the mindset I had with this record, and just like going back to like maybe like stuff on older records that I was just like, I was too afraid to do, because there was like aspects where I'm like, of the older stuff being like, this is too metal sounding. We're not a metal band. But now it's just like going back and being like, well, I would have done it this way. And like I said earlier in the podcast, it's just being like, if you don't like something on an old record, just write a new song that's better. That
well, totally
for this record.
I think this is a good representation of you guys because I do think it's a super interesting record, and it's I feel like it's very rare when a band has such a large catalog and you just be like, oh, which one should I listen to? I'll listen to that last one. You'll have an idea of if whether you dig what they do or not if you listen to that one. That's great. I mean, that should be the case with every band, but there's definitely like courts and cul-de-sacs sometimes where it's like, yeah, that one's cool. Maybe don't start with that one.
Yeah, for sure.
You can build up to that one. See if you that's really your speed or not. No, I think it's a cool record, and it's very focused. I feel like it's very it's funny when you say Dinosaur Jr. because because it's not like it's less heavy, but it's like I was like, oh, there's more of like a pop sensibility almost to it, to a certain degree, which I'm always for. I'm a big fan of bring heaviness back to pop music, bring pop music back to heaviness. Like choose whichever bumper sticker you want.
You can still be a technical musician. Like that's my thing. It's like with like you see all these like Instagram guitar players. It's like, yeah, you're way better at me at guitar, but like I don't want to listen to it. But it's like, why can't you be technical and write a catchy song?
Yeah, exactly. Like all these players that like have incredible like technical precision, but like no feel whatsoever. Where it's like, okay, you have no voice, you have no feel. I don't care, other than the fact that it's like, great gymnastics. Well done.
Yeah.
Like I hope you're proud.
And it's like, now write me a song.
Right, exactly. And then they're like, oh. But if you want to hear this Steve Vilick, no, I don't. I really don't want to see that. Well, that's awesome. Anything we didn't cover that you wanted to mention? I mean, you're such a busy dude. It wouldn't surprise me if there's like 3 more records that are like percolating right now.
There's already another Full Hell record done.
Fantastic.
That will be out at some point this year.
Okay.
It's if the new record wasn't experimental enough for you, this one definitely will be.
So there's going to be 2 Full of Hell records this year.
Yes.
Who are you, Creedence Clearwater Revival?
I wish. Yet again, going back to millionaires. And then just those guys are going to Southeast Asia and Australia in a couple weeks, and then we got just some festivals and like another tour that's not announced yet in the U.S., but that's like in the fall.
Nice. And the new arrangement is making everyone happy. Like you feel like you're not anxious about stuff or anything along those lines.
I mean, I'm anxious about everything all the time.
Well, I mean, you live in America in 2024.
Yeah.
I get it. Yeah.
But yeah, just keeping busy. Just when Gabe's doing Full of Hell stuff, we're gonna write some new Reaper's Gong stuff while he's gone. So then when he gets back, be like, here's some new songs.
Here's some new stuff. I love it. I was gonna mention what's up with the album cover for this one. Very colorful. Very, very evocative.
So the guy that did this cover, his name is Brian Montori. He's done a bunch of stuff for like Dillinger Escape Plan and like this band. Like he did stuff for like Sleigh Bells, and he's like done a bunch of like pop stuff. But yeah, he used to go on tour with Dillinger Escape Plan, and he was their fire breather on tour.
No kidding. I had Picciotto on this show years back, and like we almost didn't talk about Dillinger. We talked like 2 minutes at the end, I think, and people got so pissed. And I'm like, come on, man, you can go anywhere for that. But anyway, I've got to have him back apparently at some point. But I do love Dillinger Escape Plan. So
he's just like yet again another guy that we've just known from touring and playing. He was in a band called like Psychic Limb, which is like a crazy grindcore band from New York City, and we just known him, and he's been asking to do artwork for us for a few years. Like the last few records, like Weeping and all those, was Mark McCoy, who was in Charles Bronson and just like Das Oath and all those bands and stuff. And we just like those bands are like very those covers are just very monochromatic. So this one we're like
super colorful.
The songs are so different compared to everything else. We might as well have a cover that represents it too.
Right. The visual flair of it is going to be like if you were to put them side by side, you'd be like, well, this one looks what's different about this one.
we went to his studio the other day actually and saw they're gigantic canvases he did them on.
So they're actually physically painted,
physically multimedia with
awesome. Love that.
Textiles. He cut his own T-shirt and glued it to the painting and stuff. But that's yet another thing of going back to like what we were talking about earlier, of like people not understanding stuff because of the internet. People saw that cover, and because it's like kind of avant-garde, they're like, "This is AI." We're like, "This is the last thing." This is the least AI thing you'd ever see.
It's like the opposite of AI. Yeah, well, it's the same. The artist that does all the tropical fuck storm art. Like people are like, "Oh, this must be AI art." I'm like, no. It's like very clearly this. Like, you could almost call this outsider art, sure, but AI art. Jesus Christ, you must have a different AI that I'm looking at.
But it's like that's the one thing that's like driven me absolutely crazy
so
with this record. It's just like, one, if you know us, we wouldn't do an AI cover,
right?
But two, it's like, it's just so, that's like the thing I'm very worried about with AI is like people are now, if they see something that's not in their realm, they automatically throw it into a category that it's just like,
right.
If they don't understand it, then it must not be real.
Thou shalt not suffer an AI to live. Yes.
Yeah.
No, I think you're honest with that, unfortunately. And we're not going to solve it in the duration of this show, but I am worried about that as well.
Yeah. At least people have kind of already messed with AI so much that it doesn't work right half the time. So that's cool.
Exactly. It's a specific kind of like noticeably kind of like, wow, that's, why is that there? Like not in a good way either. Hey, Spencer, this has been awesome, man. Thank you so much for coming on the show and talking about all the records and everything. It's been great having you.
Thanks. Been a fan of the show for a while, so thank you for having me on.
Should have happened a long time ago, but I get around to it when I get around to it. What can I say? I'm slow, I'm methodical, but I get there in the end.
Yep. So thanks for having me.
So you've heard the show. Last thing, canned question. Only canned question I ever ask. Why do you do what you do?
I mean, what else am I supposed to do?
Good point.
Simple as that.
All right, brother. Take care.
You too. Bye.
Bye. There he goes. Spencer Hazard. What a cool dude. Let's we're gonna go out on one of the new songs on Coagulated. That's a tough word for me to say. Coagulated Bliss. This is Fractured Bonds to Mecca.
Fractured bonds
There you go. A little Fractured Bonds to Mecca off of Coagulated Bliss. Cool record. I'm glad he invoked Butthole Surfers because I was going to if he didn't. That was Spencer Hazard, Full of Hell. You can find him on the internets. You can find this latest record wherever you find your finer records. Fullofhell.bandcamp.com would be one of those places. Closed casket activities. Oh my God. It's over. It's over, Johnny. Wish this week was over. Yeah, I'd like to thank Spence for coming on the show. Appreciate having him. Like I said, should have happened long ago, but you get to it in the end, folks. Get to it in the end. Name of the show is Conan Neutron's Protonic Reversal. Thank you ever so very much for listening to it. The show airs Thursdays, 8 Eastern, 7 Central, 6 Mountain, 5 Pacific. Streaming live, YouTube and Twitch. Podcasted later, everywhere. ProtonicReversal.com for the archives. No ads, no sponsors, no kidding. But if you'd like to and you want to get episodes sooner, $1 a month at patreon.com/ProtonicReversal will gladly achieve that goal. Help support the show as well. See who's coming up. Mario Rubicabla is coming up. He's returning. Alan Johannes is returning. Upright Forms is coming as a band. Crover's coming back on. Dale, of course. Oh, Dwayne Dennison. Jesus is coming up as well. There's so much awesome stuff coming up. Stick with it. Thanks everyone for liking, subscribing to your platform of choice, sharing around. That's people discover the show. And that's deeply appreciated as well. Let's see, anything else? I feel like I'm speeding through this. I think that's it. Just thanks for listening.
Sound into electricity.
Stay safe out there.
Can you hear me now?
I'll check you later.
Out on Route 128, it's dark and lonely. I got my radio on. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Welcome to my top 10. I'd like to thank our sponsor. But we haven't got a sponsor. Not if you were the last man on earth. She was prepared to prove it. This one goes out to a special girl. But there is no special girl. It's the end of radio. The last announcer plays the last record. The last what? Leaves the transmitter. Circles the globe in search of a listener. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Is it really broadcasting if there's no one there to receive? It's the end of radio. As we come to the close of our broadcast day, got my radio on. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? This is a test! If this had been a real emergency, hey! This is a real goddamn emergency!